right, so today we're going to be talking about Title IX. Title IX is a federal statute. It is a civil right. It prohibits discrimination based on sex, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Here at A&M, we treat Title IX violations exactly the same as we treat any other violations based on any of the other protected civil rights classes, such as disability, religion, race, national origin, veteran status. We treat them all the same. These are the three rules that we have at A&M, and what I think is unique about our system here at A&M is that we treat all classes of people at A&M the same. At some schools, there's one set of Title IX rules for students and another set for staff and another set for faculty. At A&M, all three of these rules apply to all three sets of people. After all, sexual harassment is sexual harassment is sexual harassment, and it shouldn't matter who you are if you're filing the complaint or who you are if the complaint is against you. So what behaviors are prohibited by Title IX at A&M? The first one is sexual harassment or sex-based misconduct. And sexual harassment is unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature that is so severe, persistent, or offensive that it prohibits somebody from getting their education, from doing their work, or taking advantage of some other activity or benefit of the university. And what's really important about this definition is look at that language. It has to be so severe, persistent, or offensive that it prohibits somebody from getting their education or doing their work, okay? We are not looking for somebody telling one off-color joke. That is not a civil rights violation. It's inappropriate, and we'll talk about what we do with inappropriate and unprofessional conduct at the end of my presentation, but it is not a civil rights violation. It does not violate Title IX to tell one off-color joke. What I'm talking about is this persistent kind of behavior. Every time you go to class or every time you interact with that person, they do something that's harassing or inappropriate based on sex. All right, stalking. Stalking is another one that a lot of students accidentally trip over violating this rule because they don't recognize the behavior as being stalking. Okay, this is a federal definition. We don't have any choice about this. So here's what stalking is. Stalking is two or more unwelcome contacts that put somebody in fear for their own safety or for the safety of others, or causes substantial emotional distress. And when I say two or more unwelcome acts, I am talking about things that you traditionally think of as stalking, like peeking in the windows, following somebody around, waiting for them at Starbucks because you know that at 10 o'clock on Fridays, they're always there for their cup of coffee. I mean, that is all stalking and is definitely going to violate our rule. But what people don't know about is that texting, two or more texts that put somebody in fear for their safety or cause substantial emotional distress, that is also stalking. So these repeated emails, texts, calling their mom, yeah, it's happened, or their best friend and saying, hey, could you please go talk to Jennifer? I want to get back together with her and she won't talk to me. We're also including that behavior in the definition of stalking. And the way these walk into my office is I was dating Jennifer, she broke up with me, I want to get back together. I've tried to tell her over and over again in text that things are going to be different this time, that I really love her or whatever. Two or more of those causes substantial emotional distress really fast. So that's what stalking is. All right, dating violence. That is violence or threat of violence between people that are either currently dating or have dated in the past. On again, off again counts. Dating is a very broad term that I'm using here to cover everything from a hookup to a long-term relationship. So it covers all of that social, intimate, romantic, anything in that spectrum. Domestic violence. Domestic violence is the same thing as dating violence. It just happens between people that are currently married to each other, were married in the past, people that have a kid together, even if they were never married, or roommates. And I'm talking about platonic roommates. So you are sharing an apartment with a buddy, somebody that you're not sexually or romantically interested in, and the two of you get into a fist fight, or there is a threat of violence, I'm gonna kick your ass, something like that. That constitutes domestic violence. So just be aware of that. All right. Sexual exploitation is against the rules at A&M. It means taking advantage of somebody in a sexual way without their consent for their own benefit. And when I first read that definition, I was like, what the heck does that mean? So examples I think are good for helping to get this across. Say, for example, you have an STI and you don't tell the person that you're having sex with that you have an STI. That means you are taking advantage of them in a sexual way because you didn't give them the chance to back out or ask you to wear a condom or whatever. Another example would be to have a consensual sexual experience and one person be filming that and not tell the other person that you are recording it. You are taking advantage of them in a sexual way without their consent. I see a lot of revenge porn. Maybe you're together, you exchange some intimate pictures while you're together, then the breakup happens, and the next thing you know, you're all over Facebook naked. So that is taking advantage of somebody in a sexual way. It is prohibited by A&M's rules. Sexual assault, again, these are federal rules. This is a controversial definition. Some people think it's too broad. Others think it's not broad enough. This is the rule that we use. Sexual assault is rape, which means penetration. That's what everybody thinks of when you talk about sexual assault. It also includes touching breast, butt, groin, or genitals, okay? Those 4 areas only are included. It doesn't matter whether it's above the clothes or under the clothes. So if you are on the dance floor with somebody, you touch them on the butt, on top of their blue jeans, that is considered sexual assault and is a Title IX violation and will be handled as such, okay? So breast, groin, genitals, or butt are the 4 areas. Sometimes I have complaints that walk into my office and they're like, Professor X walks around the room while they're lecturing and they stopped behind me and I know they kind of have a crush on me and they were like giving me a neck massage. It creeped me out. It was sexual. I don't like it. They sexually assaulted me. Not sexual assault, not one of the 4 areas. You may think of what it might be. Stalking is 2 or more. That's only 1 instance. It's inappropriate behavior for sure. It's also sexual harassment. It's unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature that makes it really hard to focus on chemistry if somebody is touching your neck in a sexual way. All right, incest. Incest is when people that are closely related to each other have sex, like an uncle with a niece or a nephew, or maybe 2 step siblings. We don't ever see that one at A&M. And then statutory rape. In the state of Texas, the age of consent is 17. So you can have sex with anybody that's 17 years old or up as long as they are consenting to the sexual contact, okay? Anybody that is under the age of 17 is legally, by law, not able to consent. There is one exception to that, and if you are within 3 years of age of that 16-year-old, for example, that's fine. So if a 19-year-old has sex with a 16-year-old, the 16-year-old is capable of consenting because of the 3-year age gap, and that's fine. If a 20-year-old has sex with a 16-year-old, that 20-year-old is looking at 2 to 20 years in jail and mandatory sex offender registration for the rest of their life. The way that comes up, the way I see it in my office is somebody walks in and they had sex with a 16-year-old that they didn't know was 16. Okay? There is no defense to this. Or I didn't know how old they were. They showed me a fake ID. They were in a bar where you have to be 21 to get in, so I just assumed they were of age. There is no defense for that. So make sure you know how old the person you're having sex with is. All right, I told you we would talk about inappropriate conduct. That is anything that doesn't rise, it's offensive conduct, but it doesn't rise to the level of a Title IX violation or a civil rights violation. We call that inappropriate or unprofessional conduct. When we get those, we want to take care of it, okay? We do not want Aggieland to be a place which has offensive things happening. We just don't handle it as a Title IX violation. We usually refer those, or sometimes I will do it myself. We call up that person and we say, hey, what you're doing is not okay. You need to knock it off, because if you keep doing it, it's going to become persistent and it's going to become a civil rights violation. And then you're looking at discipline. So knock it off. So we do handle it. It's just not a civil rights problem. All right. I hope you never have to, but if you do want to report one of these things, this is how you do it. This is me. I work in the Office of Civil Rights and Equity Investigations. You will see our letters and literature across campus as CREI. So if you need to make a report, it comes directly to CREI. You do not have to report to your supervisor. Your supervisor might require you to make a report to them in addition to reporting to my office, but you definitely do not have to go through them first. Okay, we're in the medical sciences library down in the basement. It's very private down there. You won't run into anybody you know, so it is a good location. You can shoot us an email, you can walk in, you can schedule an appointment. We'll be happy to talk to you and take your report however you want to make it. That is on the very bottom, our website address. I think it's my last slide, but it's title9.tamu.edu/report. And there's a lot of information on my website. All right, this is really important. If you've been tuning me out, please wake back up and hear me when I say this. All Texas A&M employees are mandatory reporters. If you receive a paycheck or a stipend as a graduate student, you are an employee of the university, and this rule applies to you. There's 2 rules in my presentation that apply to you that are super important. So if you are a grad student who receives a paycheck or a stipend, you are a mandatory reporter. That means if you observe, you experience, or become aware of. Become aware of means somebody tells you something. A student walks into your office and tells you a story. Another coworker tells you about something. Okay, if you become aware of any of the Title IX misconduct that we've talked about today, you must report it under A&M's rules. Failure to report it is an automatic termination. There is no discretion under state law. It is an automatic termination. Now, it won't get you expelled as a student, but you will lose your job. All right, what happens after a report's made? So let's say that student walks into your office, tells you this story. You're like, I got to make a mandatory report. Sorry, I know you want me to keep this between us, but I can't. I don't want to get fired. But what you can tell them is this. Case managers in the Civil Rights or the Title IX office will be reaching out to you. We do 1 phone call and 2 emails. If you ignore those, or you just flat out answer the phone and say, I don't want to talk to you, that's okay. Okay, this is an invitation for the victim to talk to us. We want to tell you about what support's available for you at the university. We want to tell you about your options for resolving the complaint, what your rights are in the process. We just want to provide information and see what you want to do about it. But you don't have to talk to us. So if you have a student or a coworker who's telling you a story and you're telling them I'm a mandatory reporter and I have to report this, tell them it's okay. If all they have to do is tell us to go away, and we will. All right, this is the last policy that I want to make sure that you're aware of. It's the consensual relationship policy. If you are an employee, you paycheck or a stipend, this rule applies to you. A consensual relationship is any kind of mutually agreeable, amorous, romantic, or sexual relationship. Again, we are spanning the spectrum from a hookup to a long-term relationship, but it's one in which both people want to be in it. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Some kind of consensual, intimate, social, romantic relationship. Under A&M's rules, has 2 parts to this consensual relationship rule. The first one is that you cannot be in a relationship if you are an employee with anybody that you have authority or control over. So your chair as an A&M employee, the chair over your committee that says whether or not you get your PhD or your master's degree, they should not be in a romantic relationship with you because they get to decide whether or not your work is good enough for you to get that degree, right? You don't officially report to them, but they do have authority or control over you. You, as maybe a TA over a class, have authority and control over grades of everybody in your class. So you should not be having an intimate, consensual type relationship with anybody that you control their grades. All right, so that's a pretty common rule. It's in every workplace. That one is expected. The one that's surprising for a lot of grad students is you as an employee cannot have a consensual relationship with anybody that is an undergrad student at Texas A&M. You cannot date, have an intimate hookup, whatever, with an undergrad student at Texas A&M if you're an employee. So some of you don't get a paycheck or a stipend. Rule doesn't apply to you then, don't worry about it. If you are an employee, you cannot date the undergrads, is what it boils down to. This is an automatic termination, not automatic termination, but every single one that I've seen has resulted in termination so far. You can request a waiver to this rule. If you want to date an undergrad, maybe you've had a relationship with them for the last 2 years, you just graduated and now you're in grad school and the person you're dating is still an undergrad and you want to date them, continue to date them, you can apply for a waiver. If you meet an undergrad and you want to date them, before you go on that date, you need to get the waiver signed and approved. The waiver, you can talk to the HR person in your department, or you can shoot me an email as the Title IX officer. I'll send you the waiver form. It does require the undergrad signature. I know that's super awkward. Hey, I really like you. I hadn't really told you about that yet. I want to go on a date with you. Can I have your signature, please? I get it. It is super awkward, right? But figure it out because there's a lot of protection for you when that undergrad comes back and says, hey, they were sexually harassing me. They forced me into this relationship. I didn't want to do the stuff they said. I've got their signature. At least on day 1, they wanted to go out with you. So there is a lot of protection in that. You can, by the way, if some of you are married to an undergrad, automatic exemption, no paperwork required. So if you have a marriage license, you are golden, okay? You can date the undergrads at any other school. So the University of Texas, you want to date somebody from UT, no problem. It's the undergrads at this university that are off limits. Where do I get more information? This is the Title IX website. There's a ton of information on this website. It's title9.tamu.edu. Yellow button at the top, make a report. If you need to make one of those mandatory reports, this is an excellent way to do it because form pops up, you fill it in, you hit the submit button, and you get a bounce back that says, thank you very much for making the report. It's a lot of protection for you, and it shows that you made the report. Understand the process. If you are involved as a complainant or an accused person and you want to know how the process works for investigation and resolving complaints, it's all there. And then get help if you want to get connected to resources like counseling, the police. There's lots of different people on campus and in the community that you can connect with under that button. Okay, that's it. I don't have time to take questions. Sorry about that. But if you have a question, feel free to shoot me an email. And congratulations on starting your new program.